Welcome to the Freedom CEO podcast. It's about becoming the chief decision maker over your life in order to step into a life of freedom. From business, health, wealth, charity, and giving back to just doing life on your own terms. I am your host, Shay Invidiata. I am an award-winning activist, change maker, and a multifaceted impact entrepreneur with over a decade of experience in business, philanthropy, and health and wellness. In this space, I'm going to be bringing you insights, not just from me, but from incredible thought leaders around the globe to help you start making decisions towards living a life of freedom so you can live a life you love. Are you ready, guys? Because we are going all in. You are going to love today's episode. I sat down with Michael Valdes, who is the Chief Growth Officer for EXPI Realty. With over 86,000 agents, they are the largest independent brokerage in the world. Michael has spent the last 22 months opening them up in 22 countries around the globe. Prior to that, Michael was a Senior Vice President of Global Servicing for Realty, where he oversaw the growth of notorious real estate companies such as Sotheby's, Coldwell Bankers, and Century 21 in 113 countries. Today, he is also a member of the Forbes Real Estate Advisory Council. Michael is also the host of the Michael Valdes Global Podcast, as well as the Global Luxury Real Estate Mastermind that has over 12 million impressions. Not only is Michael a remarkable thought leader, but he truly has a heart of gold. And in this episode, I talked to him about all things leadership, business, real estate, and the disciplines needed in order to be a high performer. I hope you enjoy this episode. Tune in to our conversation on the Freedom CEO podcast. When he is not in New York and Miami, he is opening up another country in real estate around the world. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today on the Freedom CEO podcast. It's so good to have you here.
Oh my God, Shay, it is so good to see you. I haven't seen you yet in the new year. This is a wonderful way to do it. And by the way, I love the name of your podcast.
Thank you. Really appreciate that. Thank you.
And what freedom represents to everyone and what that does for themselves, for their families, and really for society as a whole. So I love that.
Well, and Michael, you know me, like I've got this charity philanthropy component, but then the business entrepreneur side. And when I was really thinking of how do I bridge this gap, or not like even the gap, but how do I bring like all of Shay under one label? It's just how the name merged, and really wanting to, and this is what we're going to talk about today, you know, is for people being able to create a life of freedom, not just for themselves, but in all these different areas of their life. And the more we really own our decisions and we understand the weight of our decisions, that brings freedom into our different areas. And so, you know, obviously when I was thinking about who I wanted to have on the show, this is obviously also a special episode because it's part of the launch series, which is exciting. Thank you. You know, you were at the top of my list. I said, I need to have Michael on because you have such an impressive journey in your history from being the VP of Global Servicing at Realty. And for people who maybe don't know what Realty is, they are the parent company for very well-known brokerage brands like Sotheby's, Coldwell Bankers, Century 21, and not just in the United States, but growing them into 113 countries. You know, you've handled close to $1 billion of business when you were the director of private banking for a Dutch bank, and currently crushing it at EXP, going into 22 countries, basically in 22 months, which is insane. Like, we should really pause and think about that. Like, number one, you haven't even gone into these other countries. You're doing this from the United States, but you're opening up basically a country a month. And so I'm like, Michael, you're remarkable. And I just needed to have you come on the show. And I'm really excited for our listeners to get to know you a bit today. And I think of, you know, and these guys, this is just like some of the highlights. Like Michael's impressive journey is very long, from the charity work, not to mention your role in the Latino community as well as a leader. But let's go back to like your 20-year-old self. Did you hold this vision for everything that you've set out to accomplish?
First of all, thank you for all of that. And I can't take credit for all of that. I'm surrounded by the most amazing team, and nothing gets done singularly. It all gets done by community and by the talent of everyone that's around. And I'm really fortunate to have that. But we'll get to that. But you know what? I grew up, my dad was a political prisoner in Cuba. He was part of Batista's advisory council. And so we grew up with a sense that tomorrow's not promised. So live for today and really sort of do the best you can. And it was always in my head. So I always had that sense of what you do today is what you're going to do today. And you're going to grow to what you can do tomorrow, but tomorrow's not promised. So you're going to go and do everything you can do today and live today. Yeah. And so I've always had that. You mentioned Deutsche Bank, and I was actually the first Latino director of Deutsche Bank in the country at age 25. But at age 20, I still had another business at age 20. So I actually had a production company at age 20. And I ran a company where I'm old, so I'm gonna sort of like put this all in perspective. So I'm 56 now.
That's not old. I hear that like the new 50 is like 70.
No, I love it. I'm happy with where I am right now. And so, but that was 36 years ago when I was 20, right? And so when you start putting that in perspective, that was I had a company called Zenith Entertainment. And it was a company where we bought the rights to films that were going straight to video. And anyone who's your age or younger will not even know what that means. And that was something where this was prior to Blockbuster. This was prior to all of the Netflix, obviously, and all that stuff. So this is when you had a film that was done that would not have a theatrical release. So it would be released in video. And so then you would actually go in and buy the rights to that movie for the different countries. So I would buy the wholesale rights for Latin America, and then I would go to the different film festivals and sell them country by country. And so I did that when I was in my 20s. And then we had a music side of this too. And so this was when, back 36 years ago, new artists became known by college radio stations. And so a lot of colleges had radio stations. Right. And so that's how new artists came into being. And so we actually sold, when we sold these things, we sold them off piecemeal. We sold the record company to Geffen Records. So this was David Geffen. We sold this, imagine 36 years ago. And then we sold the film production company to a company called TV Azteca, which was a Mexican company. And then eventually that became part of Univision. So that was when I was 20. So I was a big entrepreneur when I was 20. And then I went into banking.
Right. Wild. So you know what's so interesting? And I'm sure you've maybe made this connection before, but even in a younger age, in your 20s, you're using the words like doing what you can do today to grow, to evolve, to expand, and then bringing in these record labels and going and selling them into all these different countries. Like really at the core of who Michael is growth and international, like countries. And it's wild that like when you were at Realty, growing into 113 countries underneath your guidance and leadership. And now in your current role, that Michael just got promoted last year to the Chief Growth Officer for EXP, which if you don't know what EXP is, it is the fastest growing brokerage in the world today. And it is the second largest real estate brokerage in the world as well, with over 86,000 agents and rapidly still growing every day. And Michael, I know you have a crazy vision to not only be the largest and be the biggest, but what's the number you're shooting for with agent
But now
count?
I will tell you this: we are the largest independent right now, so
Right.
which means we're the largest non-franchised company in the industry globally. So
Amazing.
that's a pretty big deal because of everyone that is a part of this amazing family, like you and your growth with your team and everyone else that's a part of EXP. That is what has made us be the largest independent in the
Mhm.
industry. It's amazing. It's amazing, amazing to sort of like think about that. And so we are continuing to grow. Right now, we're coming into a shifting market. So we're going to see where that market leads us. But listen, I always sort of say that greatness happens in downturns, right? There is oh my God. I mean, if you
Yes.
really think about it, there are some amazing companies that happened. Go back to 2008. I can sort of tell you some amazing companies that happened in 2009. Uber was
Right.
founded in 2009. Venmo started in 2009. WhatsApp started in 2009. Instagram started in 2010. Airbnb started in 2010. Imagine that. Just imagine
Right.
that. There are
Yeah.
some amazing companies that are now common words to us, right?
Totally.
Happened in our last major downturn. So everyone that's concerned about, oh my God, the market, just take a breath. The last 4 years, everyone that was in this market couldn't get into it because the prices were through the roof, right?
100%.
Everyone had a dozen offers by lunchtime on any property.
Yeah.
Now
100%.
we're taking a step. We're taking a
Yeah.
breath. This is very
Yeah.
healthy for the market, by the way. The market is supposed to be cyclical. This is
Yeah.
super healthy. And
Yeah.
we're taking a breath, and opportunities come from this downturn.
I'm very excited as well. And you took the words right out of my mouth by saying the opportunity. And a lot of it, as I think you would agree, has to do with mindset, right? You can either choose to be flustered and, start to worry about what's coming next, or you could start saying, where can I find the opportunity? How can I create? And, from even a leadership standpoint for yourself, I'm sure business leaders are looking to you for advice as to where are you seeing opportunity in the market happening right now to create growth where you can burst something basically out of nothing. And I had no idea that something like WhatsApp only started, in that longer. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and that's a great question. So right now we are looking at where we can serve as the answer to many people, because when you start thinking of independent real estate brokerage companies or larger teams, they've already running on a thin margin. If you're looking at what NAR is sort of predicting at a 30% decrease of transactions, that's going to hurt a lot of people to the point that they could be out of business. Yeah. And so when you actually present an alternative like an EXP platform, where you can take a lot of the operating expenses off their table and give them an opportunity to still stay branded, still be able to now not only expand in the area that they're in, but the opportunity to now be in 24 countries around the world, it becomes a very compelling conversation to have. And in the last 90 days, we have brought on so many teams and independent brokerages that it's been extraordinary. So it's an interesting time for us as a company, as an industry, and as what we can provide to many, many people.
Well, and I think the importance of what you're saying is as strong as the leadership of a company, and not just in real estate, right? Like I think in sales in general, like when you think of the industry of sales, and you can be a top producer, whether you are a realtor and maybe you've outgrown the brand of the brokerage that you're with, which so many top producers, including, like my father's team, that very well, where you outgrow that brand. But I think of even people in top sales company, like at Microsoft, for example, where they're these like they're doing so well independent of what the leadership around them is doing. But when the market starts to quench, when it starts to shift and decline, your leadership really you feel it, like it matters because your culture is wrapped up in it. But if you've never gone through a downturn, you know, Michael, you graciously shared with us your age. I lived through the 80s, but I was born in the 80s, but I sat around the dinner table I've always heard my dad saying when interest rates went through the roof and gold,
Yeah.
you know, skyrocketed. So I have had that understanding. And of course, myself, I was in real estate in that my first downturn of a market in 07, 08. But for a lot of people in sales or in business in general, this could be a first real shift that they're seeing 60% declines in sales or in their business. And so why do you think like leadership at this point is so important, or having this idea of like mentorship becomes very important?
When someone has an uncertain future,
Mm-hmm.
they need the guidance, right? And so if you haven't been through it before, it's scary.
Sure.
It's absolutely scary. You know, I was in production in 2007, 2008, 2009. 2009 was my best year ever in real estate.
It's amazing.
That's, you know, and because there, and I'll tell you a story. I got into it really by accident. And so I had a person who was a hedge fund manager that came, and him and his wife were interested in the penthouse of this building that was coming up in Miami. And so I showed them the penthouse, and the developer did not want to move off the price. And I thought, oh, this is ridiculous. And I went and I had lunch with them, and I said, you know, don't buy it. It's too expensive. I would go in with a low ball offer. And they said, well, do you think we can get it? And I said, well, let's see. Let's start sort of the process. And we did. And the developer was adamant. And so he says, look, my wife really loves the place. Let's just go for it. And I said, I don't think that it's the right thing for you at this price. And imagine this, 2009. And he said to me, you're talking yourself out of a six-figure commission.
Sure.
And I said, it's not the right thing for you. I really believe that in my heart. And then he turned and he shifted the conversation, and he said to me, do you know what I do? And I said, I know you run a hedge fund. And so he says, well, we're about to create a vulture fund. And for your viewers and listeners that don't know what that is, in 2008, 2009, many hedge funds created what was called a vulture fund. And it was a really bad name for it, but it was very accurate. A vulture fund was basically set up to buy properties that were going back to the bank, properties that were in foreclosure, and properties that they can then go and rent, because the rental market was still strong because nobody was buying. Right. And so what we were doing was going in. And so he said, we've got a vulture fund that we're looking at for properties in Miami, because Miami and Las Vegas had the largest decline of cities in that period of time. And so they said, we just haven't found a realtor that we wanted to work with that was that honest. And so the conversation shifted in half a second. They offered me a retainer at the lunch table of $20,000 a month for me to sort of go in and work with all of the properties that I can get to them first as a first right of refusal. Wow. And so I was just sort of like done. And so because I had the finance background, they were very comfortable. I worked with their head of the vulture fund. We went through what was their parameters. And we just I hired 3 other people because we kept sort of like going through and writing so many contracts. Now, what I actually ended up doing was I had 2 other hedge funds that I would sort of work with because of their spillover. So my fiduciary responsibility was to this first one. And then I had 2 other hedge funds that I worked with in the same parameters, but they were at second and third position. So everything that I did, I had a factory going through. So in 2009 was the best year I ever had in real estate. And it was the worst year it should have been. All you have to do is shift. You have to be agile. You have to be open to the opportunities, and you have to be true to yourself, right? So in my heart, they were overpaying for that penthouse. And if they really wanted it, I would have sold it to them, right? But I was saying my professional opinion is that in this market, you are paying too much for this.
Right. Yeah.
And this was a market where most things weren't selling. And so it was a 6-figure income the 6-figure commission that I was saying no to. but I was saying yes to what my word was with them.
Sure.
And my reputation was much more valuable than that. And look what happened at that same dinner table. That was instant karma.
100%. And you also create clients that turn into friends for life, you know?
Oh my God. Yes. I still speak to them. That was 15 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that. And, you know, I think especially when we're going into these downturns, this story is very important for people. And like I said, not just in like real estate and in our industry, but if you're in business in general, right? You are in a service industry first, and it's going to be paramount that you're still servicing your clients, as tempting as it might be, to just try to get a deal done. And also,
scarcity is a mindset. Scarcity is a mindset.
It is a mindset.
The market is, look, we're in real estate. Real estate agents do not dictate price. The market does. 100%. We're only responsible for bringing two parties together, and the market will determine the price, right?
100%.
So scarcity is a mindset. Yeah. Prices are down 30%. Oh, who cares?
No,
it has nothing to do with you.
Yeah. And I think it's again, you know, why it's so important to be leaning to leadership and mentorship if you've never been through this, because you will hear this. It's a constant theme amongst leaders, but people who have been through that, where they are getting creative, you are creating opportunity, but you're also employing new strategies. And if you've not done that before, like this type of advice, not that it's always free, but usually most successful people are happy to share what they've learned, because oftentimes we've learned it from somebody else who has done the same for us, right? So it's a pass it forward.
It's your responsibility. It's not like someone's willing to do it for free. I have to do it.
Sure.
Because I was gifted this. And it's not supposed to be, this knowledge is supposed to be something that is shared. Otherwise, it was an ill-gotten gift.
Totally. Yes, I agree. Couldn't agree more. So Mike, okay, like we are going into this downturn. We've already felt it a bit. You're not putting the brakes on very hard, maybe a little on some things that I'm not aware about, but I know you're still moving forward full steam. And with that vision in mind to continue to grow through the opportunities you're finding in the downturn, you also need to leverage your time, which means you need to bring other people on your team. And, you know, if you don't know Michael Valdes, you need to follow him on Instagram. He's Michael Valdes Global, and I'm going to put it in the show notes. You'll be able to find him 10 different ways. We're going to link everything for you, so make sure to check that out. But more than just a leader for realtors, you really are such an incredible human for leadership in general, mindset, personal development. And it's fascinating for me, because I'm in real estate, of being able to watch you in that way. But it makes me curious as to, when you duplicate who Michael is, what are you looking for in a leader to bring on a team like your growth team to continue to be able to lead an organization at the scale and size that you're handling?
To really remember that we are in service to others. You have to be, every decision that you make has to be, what is this doing that's in service to others? You know, I was just telling the story before about the person with the penthouse and what happened from that. I was in service to them. It wasn't the right thing for them. So you need to make your decisions not about you. You will be taken care of if you make the right decisions. If you make those decisions where you're just thinking about how do you serve others, that is the best thing to do. You, like with my global team, we don't think about, you know, how many agents joined EXP. We always say the term, how many lives did we touch?
I love that.
And that's a really different mindset.
It's a very different mindset, and it's a very different leadership thought from many other corporations around the world, where it is about the numbers and it is about meeting quotas, right? And sales volume. And I love hearing that from your leadership team, which is also my leadership team. And I think that's really part of the difference. You know, EXP is the fastest growing brokerage in the world today. And I really do attribute a lot of that to the culture of the high caliber of leaders like yourself, like Glenn Sanford. You know, we just have an incredible team that more and more, like Tristan, right, from Success Magazine, became the chief marketing officer. Like, he's so rad with his thought leadership as well, right? Yes. And that's not by accident. That doesn't just happen. It's an outward looking in where EXP is attracting incredible leaders that are passion driven, service driven, love focus driven. And of course, the numbers at the end of the day matter, right? You still got to make money, but that's not what you're primarily focused on. And if you can serve people.
You mentioned some wonderful names there. So, you know, Tristan has like an amazing, amazing reputation in our industry. We've known of each other, but we didn't meet until the EXPCon just last year.
Oh, no way, cool.
And it was so funny. And so we connected, and I swear to God, we now call each other brothers. It was such a deep connection that has very rarely ever happened to me. So Tristan and I had the same soul, and it was amazing. And, you know, we'll just sort of like call each other on a Saturday just to sort of like, you know, just catch up. And he's an amazing human being, And Glenn, oh my God, I mean, Glenn's the reason that I'm here. You know, Glenn's vision is singular. You know, he is the only founder and CEO that was ever an agent. Now think about that. Of any other real estate company, the only founder and CEO that was ever in the field and knows what the agent is going through.
That's absurd.
I know. I know.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Well, it's remarkable. And I love that you've given them mini intros. I'm excited. They will be coming on the Freedom CEO podcast. Okay. So you guys will be able to hear from them as well when we sit down together. But two incredible human beings for sure. That are, you know, bringing on the leadership. So let me like shift a little bit. I heard you say once that one of the challenges in your current role. So again, you know, we've brought this up in 22 countries and still going, which means you're handling multiple time zones at any given time in the day. And that, of course, can be extremely challenging. And that's what you were saying and being on. And I'm one of these people that I say to agents often, because, you know, you brought up scarcity before. Agents have this tendency that they're afraid of saying the word no because they might lose that client. They don't know where their next deal's coming from. And I'm lucky. I learned at the age like 25 of this magic of the word no. Like, I fell in love with the word no around guarding my time, but also making myself my most important client. And a lot of agents can't wrap their head around that, thinking it's selfish, they're going to lose. And I'm like, no, it's backwards. Like, when you respect yourself and your time, and I schedule my workouts, my meditations, family time, fun time, like in an appointment. And you would not miss that appointment for a client. And when you can make that shift for yourself, you are doing that first, you show up the best to serve for not just your clients, your family, friends, everybody. So you've got to be super disciplined to be in the role you are, 22 countries, multiple time zones. So I'm saying all of that to say, like, what do you do to create that balance, but the disciplines you have in place to manage that?
You know, so there's a few things that you just sort of said, which were amazing nuggets. So yes, I'm very disciplined. I always have been. So I get up at 5 a.m. and go to the gym and have my time before the calls do start. I'm usually on my first call somewhere around 7 or 7:30 in the morning, my time. And it's not rare for me to end at around 7 or 7:30. But there's got to be breaks in between where, you know, I'll say to my assistant, I need a 2-hour break in my schedule so that I can just catch up to what I actually just sort of did. If I'm on calls back to back, hour after hour for 12 hours straight, I'm not of service to anyone.
Sure.
Because I haven't digested what I've just done before I've jumped into the next one.
Totally.
So there needs to be breaks so that there is a reset in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it doesn't work, right?
Totally.
This to me is a beautiful reset for me. I just get to sit and talk to a friend. So I love this reset in my day today. And later on in the afternoon, I actually have a guest on my podcast. And then that sort of like is a second sort of a break in my day. Still serving others, right? Because we're sharing information that might help somebody else. Totally. And maybe have somebody else look at something a little bit differently. And so that to me is still being of service, but that to me is also having a break in my day where I can just sort of sit and reflect. So it's almost sort of playing, dual. And when you were sort of saying, the idea of saying no, I do it in somewhat of a different way. Everyone sort of knows where it's black and white, right? If somebody says to me, and I've said it to you before, are we opening in such and such a country? And I sort of said, not now. I'm not sort of saying to you, I'll put it under consideration, or it's sort of like, not now. But then it saves you, right? And then you can sort of regroup. And now, the country we're talking about may actually have come back around full circle, and now we may be ready. But, it's sort of like I don't sort of leave a door open if the door isn't open now, because it's unfair to the person asking, and it's unfair to me. Because if I give them a window of hope, they're going to call me all day long until I say yes. And so that doesn't help them because it doesn't give them clarity. And it doesn't help me because it steals my time.
Exactly.
So clarity is super important to me. I'm a high D, and it's always sort of like, and I have to be cognizant that not everyone else is. And I have to be cognizant of how I deliver my message to other people. And but it's also the idea that, my love language is shorthand. Give me bullet points and let me digest and let me make a quick decision. Here are all the facts. Yes or no, move on. Because that's the only way we've been able to do this. And that's the only way that's fair, not only for the other person, but for me as well.
Totally. And, I also say too, like whatever you're saying yes to means you're saying no to something else. Absolutely. And also vice versa. Whatever you're saying no to means you're saying yes to something else. And so when you can get clear on what your priorities are, it becomes very easy to say, not right now, like a no, not maybe forever, but no for now. And then being able to fully lean into what you're saying yes to as well.
You know what? Everything around us is infinite, right? It's sort of like opportunities are infinite. Money is infinite. The air that we breathe is infinite. The only thing that's finite is time.
Right.
We all have the same amount of time. This half an hour that we just sort of spent speaking is gone.
Right.
There's all the money in the world can't bring that last half hour back.
Totally.
That's gone. So that's the only thing that's finite. Everything else is infinite. And if you don't learn how to manage what's finite, you can't get to what's infinite.
100%. And, again, just kind of going back what I was sharing earlier, it's why it's so important. The things that are important to you in your personal life, but that are important to make you the best version of yourself.
That's right.
You shouldn't be trading that off, because then there's resentment. There's, you're not happy. And then that doesn't serve anybody. And it goes back to until Elon Musk figures out how we can time travel and how we can buy more time, we have to keep living by these principles, right? That's guarding our time and what's important and making sure we're taken care of first so that we can show up and serve the best.
But here's what's so beautiful about that too. That's the great equalizer. We have the same 24 hours that Elon Musk has.
It is. Sorry, Elon. Yes.
That's our great equalizer as well. So he uses his 24 hours probably much differently than you or I use ours, right?
Yeah.
But that's the point, that we all have that same opportunity of what those 24 hours span of time is to reach whatever we want to reach.
Yes, that is the opportunity and the inspiration, right?
That's
and
right.
This is why it's so fantastic to be speaking to different leaders and learning, like, what time do you wake up in the morning? You're working out. What are you eating? You know, like, I love all of this, like, cross sharing, really, you know, so that you can continue to evolve. You can adapt and bring into things into your life that maybe, like, I've not thought about before. So these conversations are so important to be having. And we're going to wrap up, but because we're speaking to you as the Chief Growth Officer, we have to talk about growth a little more because that would just be silly. So I would love to know, and this is, you know, I guess what I just even said, this is really for me, but what are you learning right now? Or, like, in what area of your life are you growing, maybe being challenged that's forcing you to grow? But yeah, like, teach us, what are you learning right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, look, I think that I always find different things that I want to learn to try to keep. I want to be the best teacher that I can be, but you can only do that by being the best student, right? So you always have to try to learn new things. So my newest thing that I actually want to learn this year is I want to get a helicopter license.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
And so, yeah, that was one of the things that I wanted to do. You know, I have a home in Miami and I have a home in New York. So there's heliports in both, very close to my home. And so that was one of the things that I wanted to do. I've already looked into it, and I'm actually going to start classes next month.
I love that. Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I put on my vision board that I want to get my pilot license.
Yeah.
I think it would be fun.
Yeah.
So I love that you're doing that. Fully a solid step ahead of me because you're already looking into classes. But I love that. That's so exciting.
Yeah. So that's also going to be something for me, right? And it's also something that will challenge me and will continue to help me grow.
I love that. Okay, last question for you, Michael.
Yeah.
What would you say has brought the most freedom into your life?
That wasn't even on your questions. I like this one. I like this one. You know, and it's probably not the answer that you're expecting. So when I was 26 years old, I was diagnosed with colon cancer.
Wow.
And it was something where, you know, you're not in your 20s, you're not supposed to be testing your own mortality. But for me, when I was able to overcome that, and thankfully it's been 30 years, it was something that gave me the greatest freedom, because in your 20s, you know, you go through and you start sort of thinking about the environment in which you're in, and you always start living for others. And you start living for approval of others, and you start, whether that's your boss, whether that's your spouse, whether that's your friends. And so you always start living for others. And it gave me the greatest freedom, because afterwards I realized that every day was a gift. And I also realized that whatever anyone thought of me wasn't my responsibility. And it was the greatest freedom, because it allowed me to truly just grow and be responsible for myself, my own actions, and really wanting to serve others. It allows you the freedom to do that. So that was really the greatest. That was a great freedom for me.
Well, and it would have changed how you make decisions as well.
100%.
Right?
100%.
So,
yeah.
Unbelievable. Yeah. I did not know that about you.
Yeah.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for joining me today. It's always so great to chat with you. And we're going to have to probably have you back on the show at some point.
I would love that. And Shay, I have to say to you, you know that I love your family. You know that I love your dad. I love you. And I love who you are. And I know that this is really, you know, you're interviewing others, but I want people to Google you and to understand what you do with your charity, the amount of people that you literally save, the amount of lives that you save. You're an amazing human being, and I'm just privileged to know you. Thank you for what you do.
Oh, Michael, I wish I had a virtual hug right now. Thank you. That honestly means so much to me coming from you. Thank you.
Thank you, my love.
Thanks for tuning into the Freedom CEO podcast. If you got value out of today's show, I would love for you to leave a review, as it will help my show reach other people as well. You know what to do. Download this episode, click the like and subscribe button. If you feel like spreading more love, hop over to Instagram and share today's show in your stories. Remember to tag Shane Vidiata and the Freedom CEO. My DMs are always open, so drop me a line. I'd love to connect. Until next time, keep owning your decisions to live a life of freedom. Live a life you love.